Guys, I just kicked out my roommate and they had lived here for less than a month. What's up guys, it's McKeown back again with another video this week. If you recognize where I am sitting in my living room. This personal house about a year ago, I spent about 10 months building, went ahead and built it with a custom Airbnb suite, as well as an opportunity to have a roommate in the house itself to live with me to really offset the total mortgage cost. Now fast forward about 10 or 11 months, I had my first initial roommate move out and decided to go with a second roommate. Now again, the type of income that I'm making and generating, I don't necessarily need a roommate. I don't need to house hack my own house, but it's more or less just an option for myself to not really have to pay the entire mortgage at the end of the day. Now I'm 32 years old. I've been living with roommates or some kind of variation of roommates since I was 19 and I joined the Marine Corps. So roommates for me are just kind of second nature with me. They're something that I'm just so used to. Now I have lived in houses by myself. I'm currently living in my house right now by myself. And I've also lived in my fourplex, which was a small 700 or so square foot unit. Obviously lived by myself there as well. But moving forward, I will not be having any more roommates. Now I wanted to make this video for a couple different reasons. Obviously, with having roommates for really over a decade now, I've learned a lot about living with other people. I've also learned relatively recently kind of what to do and what not to do when it comes to having a roommate. Now, a lot of you that are watching my videos have seen what I've done with my rental properties. I've purchased rental properties or purchased multifamilies, lived in them, rented out the rooms or rented out the other side, and then moved from them to an additional property and kind of just accumulated rental properties along the way. Now, if you're not familiar with the term, if you move into a house with the intent to live in it and then rent out the rooms, it's called house hacking. Now, I've done that with a single family, I've done that with a duplex, and technically, I have even done it with this primary residence that I built. And as I mentioned before, for the most part, I've had great roommates. The last roommate that I had before this last roommate, the initial roommate that I had moved in when the house was brand new, no issues whatsoever. He was just moving to another state, and by moving to another state, he needed obviously to move out of here. He even has reached out to me personally asking when he does make it back to Texas if he potentially can have the room back. So again, no issues with the first roommate. The issues came when I had the second roommate move in. Now, me being a person that doesn't like vacancy, this is a total error on my part. For me personally, I had someone lined up that wanted to move in quickly, and then I had another person reach out to me quickly and say, hey, I would love to move in too. The individual had the security deposit. The individual also had first month's rent ready and available to pay. However, when it comes to individuals around my age, there just inherently becomes kind of a level of trust that I have, and that's my downfall. I still should have treated it exactly like I would have treated any of my rental properties, meaning get a background check and get a credit check. Now, I will tell you a story, and this is a real life story that happened to me about 2.5 or 3 years ago. The person is long gone out of my life. My assumption is they do not watch my YouTube videos, but if they do, I guess that'll be a surprise. But when I was house hacking an individual house, I had someone reach out to me wanting to rent not just one bedroom, but 2 bedrooms. So the sheer fact that I could have one roommate instead of 2 roommates, he could be renting both rooms. And as you guys know, when you start to kind of add multiple roommates, you start to add multiple potential conflicting personalities. And I just thought the idea that he was also kind of somewhat in the industry that I'm in, it could potentially benefit me as well. But if you guys see a reoccurring fact here, I did not run a credit check, I did not run a background check, and about a month after he moved in, I got something in the mail from Nextdoor. Nextdoor is an app that you use, you may or may not use. It's for your local community. Anyways, Nextdoor, the app, when I signed up for it, having moved to a new subdivision, basically said that I couldn't be using the app because a sex offender lived in my house. Now again, I won't go into too much detail there. It was a short-term lease, and as soon as I found that out, I just kept it to myself until the short-term lease ended. It was about a 6-month lease. No real issue or turmoil there. It was something that happened substantially in the past, so again, I didn't really hold it against him. But at the end of the day, I wasn't comfortable with that. It was my fault for not checking. So in 6 months, I gave him a reason why I needed him out, and we've moved on with our life. Now fast forward to the roommate that I just kicked out. Now I'm not gonna give you too much of a story, but I will tell you one of the biggest things that you can do as a landlord or as the owner of the actual house, make sure, again, background check and credit check. Now it goes actually much more beyond that though. A background check and a credit check is gonna tell you a bit, but you're still gonna have to have them apply and go through an application process, make sure that they actually have a job, make sure that they're going to keep the job, make sure that they've had previous rental history as well. When we're talking previous rental history, make sure that they have had no issues from the previous place. And this is pure speculation, but I think if I would have done probably a previous rental check on this individual, I probably could have run up with some red flags. Because at the end of the day, people can come across completely different than what they are at the end of the day. So when it comes to actually people living in your physical house, now again, if it was a tenant in a house that I own, you know, I may be flexible with credit. I may be flexible with a background check. At the end of the day, I'm the landlord. I decide who moves into my house and who doesn't move into my house, or who moves into a rental property, who doesn't move into a rental property. But at the end of the day, I should be the most stingy when it comes to an actual person living where I am living. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys the story, or really as much of the story as I can. My old roommate moved out. Again, he had to move out of state and will be back likely in the next 6 months. My hope is he can move in at that point. But to be honest with you, in the next 6 months, I'm going to be living without a roommate after this situation. But my new roommate I met with, the individual actually had a dog, worked well with my dog. The fact that that individual would be able to watch mine as well when I'm at work or if I'm traveling. So it was convenient in that aspect. Decided to let that individual move in. I decided to let that individual move in without a credit check again, without a background check, really without any kind of workup or looking into them whatsoever. I just felt comfortable at the end of the day, and to me that was enough. My advice for you guys is do not let that be enough. Do your due diligence, especially if you're living with people. Now, I did have the individual sign a formal lease. At the end of the day, that was a situation where the individual tried to use it against me. But again, this is what I do for a living. I very much know the rules and regulations when it comes to living in your household, as well as being a tenant. Now, the story comes down to really finding someone that lives a similar life to you. If you followed my journey, I'm an individual that is up extremely early. I have a strict morning routine, waking up anywhere between 3 and 4:30 in the morning. I make sure I get to the gym by 4 or 5 a.m., get my day rolling by 7:30, and I'm at the office by 8 a.m. Now, this isn't to say that you can't have a roommate that really works opposite schedules of you. I just personally decide that I don't want to go out every single weekend. I do not want to really waste my evenings when I could go ahead and get up early the next day and crush the day. A lot of my morning routine is what has led me to a lot of the success that I've had. At the end of the day, consistency for me, consistency in my morning routine, consistency with putting in work each and every day is really what has, again, got me to be able to build my own dream house, has allowed me to buy multiple rental properties, and on top of that has allowed me to build a real estate team here locally in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So first things first, the individual didn't really match up with kind of my life, and that's okay. It was something that I could totally be fine with. I did mention to them that, hey, you know, I don't want to be waking up every single weekend with you and maybe potentially other people partying at my house till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and it happened back-to-back weekends. So that in itself was kind of a red flag to begin with. But truly, again, I am very, very easy to work with. I am very easygoing. I understand a lot of people want to have fun, and I'm not opposed to roommates having fun, especially when they're living with me. So once again, guys, I'm not opposed to people having fun. I'm not opposed to people living their life and enjoying it, especially while they're living with me. But again, it was kind of the first red flag, the fact that back-to-back weekends, this individual decided to stay up till about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and both times that individual did wake me up. The second time, which was really the last weekend the individual stayed with me, the individual was fighting with someone. Again, I do not know who the person was, but I woke up to about 2:30 in the morning and the two individuals were yelling and screaming. Now, I did go ahead and get to know this individual. My assumption at the time was it was a past relationship. I quickly learned after messaging them in the morning that it wasn't a past relationship, it was just a colleague or friend. But I started to question why a colleague or friend was at my house until 2:30 or 3 in the morning. As you can assume, I went downstairs and their clothing was downstairs. My assumption again was that they stayed over. Again, not an issue at all when it comes to living with a roommate. It's going to happen. Now I'm gonna go ahead and get to the juicy part. The juicy part is something that I'm not comfortable with, something that I don't want done in my house. I know relationships and friendships and potentially the coming of an individual staying over at the house is going to happen. It's inevitable. We are human beings, and that's not the part that I'm uncomfortable with. The part that I'm uncomfortable with is I'm a very straight edge individual. I was not raised, around a lot of potentially harmful or disastrous items. Alcohol, first of all, for me was not introduced into my life really personally until I was well over 21. Now, this isn't a story of alcohol, but it started with alcohol itself. Again, I'm not opposed to alcohol. I do drink occasionally, but it's not something I'm looking to do and get wasted every single weekend. In this case, it seemed to be the case for this individual. Again, Not something I would necessarily be opposed to, but it's not something that I love the idea of rooming with either. Now, the juicy part comes when I actually came back from the gym the following morning. So the following morning, it looks like the individuals had continued to stay here, got a little bit of takeout for morning breakfast, came back and decided to go ahead and clean up after their mess in the kitchen. Started cleaning up from them in the kitchen. I threw away some beer cans, threw away a couple boxes, and realized when I was throwing away a box of beer, on the top of that, as I was exiting into the garage, a wallet fell onto the ground. Now, when that bifold wallet fell onto the ground, an individual, a particular baggie, fell out of that wallet. Now, I'm not going to really have to give you guys any more details beyond that, but me personally, that was the first time I have ever even seen anything inside of a pouch, and it's not something I'm personally comfortable with at all, especially with my profession, especially with the goals and the drive and the desire that I have in my life. That doesn't fit anywhere in my life, and especially it doesn't fit in this household. Now, the issue went even further than that. I wound up confronting my roommate, basically explaining to the individual saying, hey, this is not something I'm comfortable with, whether or not you did it here, whether or not you didn't do it here, it was sitting in my household, and it's not something I want in my house at all. So at the end of the day, I let the individual know that, hey, I'll give your security deposit back, I'll give you all of your rent back, you've lived here free for 2.5 to 3 weeks, I'll give you it all back, I just need you out of the house. Now, the issue stemmed on beyond that to the point where the individual actually turned that around and tried to act as the victim, which, to be honest, was quite hilarious. So I did what I needed to do at the end of the day. I reached out to my local attorney, had my attorney start to draft up documents just in case I needed to evict this particular tenant. However, I did have a connection with the individual's parents. The parents were somewhat willing to work with me, and we got the individual out of my house at a relatively easy pace. I think the individual got out of my house within a week, but at the end of the day, I was ready to evict the tenant if I needed to, because honestly, that doesn't have any place for me, it doesn't have any place within my household. And the minute I see that, I personally don't even want to surround myself with those kinds of individuals. It actually goes back all the way to middle school or high school, guys. I know as we grow up, we start to surround ourselves with people that are like-minded or people that we can kind of relate to. Sometimes we get stuck in the wrong crowd. Sometimes we get lucky and we get surrounded by great people. Those great people are the people that push us and make us better and build us into being, great individuals. I tell people all the time, you truly are who you surround yourself by. So if you choose and elect to hang out with those types of people that are just going to drag you down, bring you into areas of life that you just shouldn't be, you're going to be stuck in that rut, and it's very difficult to get out. I, on the other hand, am very selective with who I surround myself with. A lot of the people that are my best friends are actually in the industry and are hardworking individuals that have huge goals, potentially making multiple millions of dollars in the industry, whether it be mortgage, real estate, insurance, title, whatever it may be. Those are the kind of people I want to surround myself by, because those are the people I wake up to every single day and I see them putting in the work, so it makes me want to put in the work. So really, the story here, guys, I wound up having a roommate move in far too fast, and I did little to nothing as far as getting to know them or really digging into their life to see if they're an actually good person. Part of that is really, honestly, all of it's my fault. And to be frank with you guys, I'm still learning day in and day out. This industry constantly teaches you new things, and that's the beauty of it. Is I've been in the industry for 4.5 years, and I'm continuing to learn stuff each and every day. So I do want to end this with just a bit of advice for you guys. I know a lot of people are reaching out to me on this YouTube channel wanting to get connected with local real estate agents in your city or your state to potentially help you purchase a property with the intent, whether it be a multifamily to rent out the other side, or maybe just a single family 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage house, a standard rental property to move into, maybe fix up and rent out, or just rent out the rooms while you're living there. Take the advice from me, guys, and do your due diligence. Now, I will give you some advice as well too when it comes to the lease. Honestly, I've done this in the past before. For whatever reason, I was just in such a hurry, probably so many things going on in my life at one time that I just was like, hey, let me write up this lease real quick, get it done with. But leases in the past, I've actually written up kind of a caveat under special provisions that basically state, hey, tenant or landlord at any given time or right has the ability to terminate this lease if the ability to live together doesn't work out. Now, this would basically void any and all of the lease and allow you as the landlord, or potentially your tenant, if your tenant doesn't get along with you that's living with you, the right to terminate the lease and move forward. And the reason why I would suggest adding this, and again, I'm not an attorney, I cannot give you guys legal advice, but I will tell you that will give the tenant as well as yourself the right to move out. And on top of that, that's the issue issue that came back here was the fact that this individual wanted to sit here and say, hey, I've got a lease, I'm staying here for 12 months. But at the end of the day, there's no way that person was gonna live here for 12 months, especially with the stigma and kind of the relationship that had been broken because of what happened that morning. But it's a caveat that would help you and save you guys a ton of time. Now, I may make a full video down the road as far as giving you guys landlord tips, especially first-time landlords. I think it would be good for a lot of the people that watch my YouTube channel, especially since I'm in about year 4 or 5 of being a landlord. But I did want to give you guys an update kind of on my situation that has happened within the last couple weeks here, where I had to kick out a roommate. Thanks again for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. It really does help, and stay tuned for the next video.